Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another session and tutorial, which is going to be on an exciting topic. Today, we are with the GRRSP 16 cohort, who've actually done an excellent job over the last 5 months, building on their research projects. And this is where it's a very good time to look into one of the crucial skills in research and manuscript writing and formatting, which is referencing. Before we start, and this is a very informal kind of discussion, so feel free to turn on your mics and engage as well. Um, who is sort of familiar with any referencing tools or any sort of specific managers for referencing, and how have your experience been with using referencing? Or maybe you don't use a tool, you kind of manually reference, and how has your experience been with the manual referencing style? So we can hear from some of our scholars today. I see Rogan and Dikla as well. So we can start with Dikla and tell us a bit about um, your,
Yes,
your experience.
I have experience with Zotero managing references, and it's pretty good. To help me to create the reference depending on the style that I want. I found that I still need to check the reference at the end because sometimes, for example, capital letters in the title is something that Zotero does frequently and is not allowed in APA style, for example. But I found very, very useful to help me to consolidate all the references of the work I'm doing in my master's.
Right. So we have one sort of positive vote for Zotero, and there's others as well. I see some comments about other platforms like EndNote and Mendeley as well. So these are other referencing managers. And the idea behind using these managers is that referencing is always going to be a part of every research paper we write. You cite, you reference, and things can sometimes get out of hand when we are dealing with bigger papers, bigger studies. It may not just be 20 or 30 references, but 50 or 70 references. So, how much would you be able to keep up with a manual experience? But it's good to hear because in GRRSP, we have scholars who may just be starting on with their referencing journeys and research journeys. So I'll hear from Rogan a bit as well about how has your experience been if you've ever cited or referenced anything.
So far I have done manual citation only. So these things about EndNote and Zotero are new to me, and I am really excited to learn about this from this lecture.
Right. No, absolutely. And Rogan, when it comes to manual citation or referencing, how do you find it personally? What is your process of trying to manually do that?
Think it is a lot of workload. We have to be very particularly precise about what we are citing from the PubMed or anything that we use. But I think using this softwares like EndNote will be more useful and will be more convenient to cite references while you're doing the research.
Absolutely. So it's very good to see that, there is a clear need for using these managers and to be able to reference efficiently without making mistakes, which can easily happen when we're doing this manually ourselves. So let's kind of dive in to understanding Zotero, which is one of those platforms. And as a disclaimer, there's no sponsorship or any collaboration that I have with Zotero, but just a really good platform that I found over the course of many, many years now. So I'm going to share my screen and kind of show how Zotero, and this way we can just walk through typically, what we see in Zotero. So this is a free platform, and you're free to download it from the Zotero website. And that's for Mac, for Windows, and there might be small differences between those two systems, but more or less the features are very similar. So what you see here in front of you is on the left side, there is my library, which is looking at different folders I've created over time. And each folder is for a different research project. And there are other mini folders that Zotero gives you, which could be in the form of any duplicate papers, excluded papers, retracted papers. So it's really up to you how you use this, but essentially the main thing you're looking at is your own folder for your project. And what I'm going to do now is a quick walkthrough of how I would, do referencing and citing for a project. And we're going to use a pilot paper just as a way to see how referencing could look like. So I'm going to now share the paper that we have in front of us, which is, again, none of this is real data or real extracted results, but a systematic review looking at the prevalence of burnout among healthcare professionals. As you can see in this paragraph, I'm talking about how there are high rates of burnout in healthcare workers. There is a risk of developing mental health disorders due to this burnout, and very limited interventions that are helping tackle this problem. And then I'm referencing a study that looked at, something to do with burnout. So I see at least 4 to 5, if not more, references that I need to add just in these few sentences. And once you download Zotero, one of the good things is that the extension or the shortcut to Zotero is actually added into your Word document. So as you can see on the top here, I already have Zotero as one of my options that come up. But this option only comes up once you've actually started the Zotero application. Otherwise, you won't. You might see the option, but you might not be able to use any of these features. So when I open Zotero from my Word document, I see add citation, edit, insert note, document preferences. Now we'll go back to my Zotero file, and I'm going to first create a new folder here. So I would look into file and then new collection. So that's really my folder, and I could name it whatever I like. It doesn't really affect anything. Burnout, healthcare, and that is my new folder now. Now, it's very straightforward in the sense that you can look at it in 2 steps. You've got the first step, which is simply adding the papers that you want to reference and saving it onto Zotero. So that is our first step we're trying to go through here. And that would mean really looking for the paper. So if you've got, for example, again, going back to our study, we might have a paper on high rates of burnout that you're trying to find. So I'm going to now, cite a paper that can be done in multiple ways. You've got this pen icon here on the top, which allows you to add any paper on the basis of either the DOI, which is a link to cite papers. You can find this in most of the databases out there. There is PubMed ID, which can be used, so PMID, and then some other ways to cite a paper. So this is one way, and what you can do very simply is copy and paste that paper in to your section here on Zotero. So I'm going to just unshare my screen quickly and then open my browser to go and find a paper. But in the meantime, any questions that you may have related to what you've understood around Zotero or any thoughts about Zotero are welcome. Just getting the paper now. All right. So I'm sharing my screen again, and this time we are looking at a simple search on PubMed, and say, for example, the first sentence that talked about burnout. I'm going to open this paper. So there's multiple ways you can add this paper on Zotero. One way is, like I mentioned, using the DOI or the PubMed ID. So as you can see, the DOI is right here, and I would just copy it and then go to Zotero. And when you're in Zotero, again, the pen icon, and you just paste that and press enter. This takes a few seconds, and there you have it. And basically, you've added that paper, and now you are also looking at the right side, which is giving you details on the paper. So Zotero has managed to extract all the important details. You could add a few more if you wanted to, but generally, it does a pretty good job at adding research papers, book chapters, editorials, case reports, any type of paper that you find using the DOI method. You may find another paper, so when I looked at that section, let's say we add another paper on the interventions to tackle, um, burnout. So this is another paper. And the interesting thing is you could either use the DOI method or you could send to and the manager, and it could create a file here. It gets downloaded. And once it's downloaded, you could open it in Zotero. So this way, some people might find it a bit complicated. Some might prefer just directly copy pasting it. Many ways to go around it. If you're using Google Scholar, actually, very interestingly, you'll find that it has a small shortcut that helps you also directly cite. So I'm going to show a Google Scholar example as well. So burnout. And as you can see here, when you click on cite, so this is any paper, you click on cite here, you can see that there is the option to use Refman. Refman is what we actually use to connect it to Zotero. So once I clicked on that download option after it downloaded the paper, Zotero just opens directly and it asks you to import, and you can click OK. And here you go. You've got burnout here. So that's if you're using Google Scholar. Otherwise, you can always just copy paste the DOI and then build it. So I have in this way actually added in, two papers so far. I'll add just one more paper for the sake of this example. So cite, and again, Refman, the download icon comes up, I click on it, and then I import it, and that's my third paper. Now I've got three papers here just for the sake of this example, and say this is all the papers that I ever needed for my referencing. It's unlikely that your paper is going to be only 3 references long, but for this case, we're going to use it. Now you've completed the first step, which is adding all your papers that you wanted to reference into Zotero. And this list can look much longer when you're dealing with a real paper. Now, the second step, and that's where Zotero really shines, is actually citing things. So now you're ready. You've got your Zotero platform loaded. I'm now going to open my Word document and say I've got the first sentence here and I want to cite it with a particular reference. So you could see here that there is the option to add or edit a citation, which is on the top left. Once you click on that, you get this dialog box, and it shows you the different referencing styles which are commonly used by most journals. So just for our sake, we might choose the APA 7th edition and click on OK. So now Zotero is going to remember that for this particular document, I prefer the APA style. Now a small search bar comes up, and here you get to type in the paper. There's just the title of the paper that you wanted to reference. And you can either type the title, or if you know the first author's name, you could type that as well. And you see the list of papers coming up. And these papers can be from other folders that I have. So that's very interesting. You might have papers on a different folder that can come in and get cited here if you wanted to. But for our sake here, I wanted to cite this particular paper on burnout syndrome among healthcare professionals. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on enter. And now using the APA format, it has automatically added Bridgman et al. 2018 into my sentence. Now, this becomes a lot easier because you have a whole paper and you can just keep adding references this way. So I've got a second sentence here about how, there's a risk factor for mental health disorders. Again, add or edit citation. And I would like to add, this time, instead of one paper, maybe I'd like to reference two papers in one sentence. So I'm going to pick the second paper here. And I also wanted to add the third paper. So I'm going to also find that third paper, which, for example, is measurement of burnout. And this time I've got two references. You could have 3, 4, as many as you want in one citation. And I click on enter. This time it's added two different references. So you can see that it can be used very seamlessly for multiple citations in the same sentence. And essentially, when you do all that, you're building up your citations, and Zotero is remembering the order of the papers as you keep citing them. Because eventually, when you have your final reference list, going back and getting those orders can get complicated. So I'm going to just add maybe a different paper from another folder here, and that completes this paragraph. Now, the final step is actually being able to add the list of references. So you've cited it, and now Zotero helps you add those references. So say I've got my references section at the end of my manuscript, and I'd like to now ask Zotero to add all of that in one list at the end. So this is where you have the second option here, which is add or edit bibliography. You click on that. In one click, it now remembers and adds the order of those papers in the way they were cited in your literature. And depending on the referencing style, some of them might actually have 1, 2, 3 as numbering formats. Some might have lettering formats. So Zotero takes care of that. And it does a very accurate job in most cases in being able to add those references, because there's so many nuances in this reference that the way the first author's name is written, the second author's name is written, the year of publication, and it can get confusing if you don't have a referencing manager to do it very accurately. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was just say you've submitted to a journal, or for some reason you wanted to change your referencing style. Zotero makes it very easy. So you've got your paper now, and you don't want it in APA. Say you wanted it to be in Vancouver for a different journal or for any other reason. So there's this option here called Document Preferences, and you click on Document Preferences, and there you have the same dialog box that you saw at the beginning, but instead here you can now pick, say, the Vancouver style. You click on that, and you click on OK, and just like that, your references are all going to be in Vancouver style, including the in-text citations. So as you can see, it's now changed it according to how the Vancouver style prefers it. So this is a short summary of how Zotero is being used as a referencing manager for all research papers. We highly encourage you use this to make sure you have a clear, efficient way of doing referencing, and you come out as a very skillful researcher when you're able to use such tools in research. So that's all from my side, and any other questions, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, and get back to us. Thank you.